Hey folks, how's it going? Remaster, and welcome back to an episode of Cards and Castles 2 Hidden Combos, where today we're back with a brand new deck, and one that I think is probably my best deck yet here in Cards and Castles 2, as we're coming out of a recent update. A lot of things have changed. The game is basically reshaping into a completely different state than you may have last seen on the channel here. I know some people tend to keep up with the game only via my channel, and I do apologize, by the way, for another very delayed upload, but I feel like that's just where my schedule is. That's just where I am currently in life. Still making content though, over on Twitch, but for the most part, videos are not stopping. It's just kind of a gap thing that we're doing now, and it's just kind of, like I said, it's where I'm at. But we have a great deck to examine today, and one, like I said, is probably my best built deck yet. So I won't waste no further time and jump right to it. Alright folks, and here we are, the deck list for today. We're looking at Doggo Strike, a deck that utilizes the out-of-hand combination of Skeletal Dog with Final Strike. Two very kind of weird, inconspicuous cards, maybe Dog more than Strike, but the idea is to power up the Skeletal Dog with Tombstones, to which he generates a big power of attack, and sends all of that damage directly to the enemy's everything, mind you, with Final Strike. Usually the max Tombstone count you have is 5, so most of the time you'll have Dog reach about 6 attack points, and then of course that will be sent directly to the enemy. If you manipulate your Tombstones well enough, you can actually get more damage into your big Dog Strike, but most of the time you're hitting 6 damage, and that's okay. That's okay. Dog Strike doesn't need to be a game ender, it needs to be a powerful swing. The entire deck is pretty much built around, it's a typical Tombstone skeleton build here in Ninja Necromancer, and, you have Mordennoth, kind of a final boss to it, right? Oh, I want to generate the skeletons and then shoot them all at the enemy. That is essentially what we're doing, but I think the Doggo Strike combination gives you a lot more ways to win and end games than just Mordennoth. Mordennoth is powerful, but to have more copies, potentially stronger copies of him in the deck, is just that much more insane. And as you can see here, like I said, a lot of our deck here is just based around not only generating Tombstones, but controlling the board. Your main focus with Dog Strike is to lock down the board as best as you can while generating the Tombstones. You're not afraid to send these units into their deaths. Things like the Witch Doctor, the Zethik, the Magician, the White Knight, the Horseman. All great cards to just kind of fuel as sack. You don't have to hold them for Mordennoth. You can use them to just purely generate the Tombstones, as well as get you some extra benefits, like Magician popping out a skeleton for your hand, the Horseman drawing a card to kind of keep your hand looking fresh, and just kind of going through to make sure you find things like Final Strike and Mordennoth. Those are, of course, important. And, meanwhile, the rest is just big hunted skeletons. Make sure you have enough skeletons to make Mordennoth seem worthwhile. Norabon, Phantom Horse, Skeletal Warrior, Army of the Dead, etc. That's just a solid way, in my opinion, to collect skeletons and blast your opponent with Mordennoth, and then you end it with the Doggo Strike. Pretty clean cut and effective. And yeah, let's go ahead and actually quickly do the card by card here, so that way you get an idea of where the element's coming to play here. So we mentioned Skeletal Dog up at the top here, the big, swing condition of the deck. Again, one half the combo that is named for it. Very, very strong card for Final Strike here. Not only does it gain attack power off of Tombstones, actually doesn't pop the Tombstones as well, which is really, really nice. You can still use those Tombstones for, say, a backup Norabon, Magician, White Knight, etc. Being able to still use all of those tools at in your Tombstone backline, really, really powerful, and one that I think is being slept on a little bit here with the dog. Following that, Army of the Dead to generate more skeletons, just get more into your hand. Best way to kind of create more skeletons other than Norabon is through this card. Leather-bound books, excuse me, for some draw. Skeletal Warrior to help find your skeletons, including Mordennoth and Norabon. Horseman for a draw tool, but also the charge is very good at helping in the early game. Multi-Strike is a great control tool in ninjas to deal 2 to a unit and then 4 to a second. Helps you with those sort of later, early, beginning of mid-game unit sizes, usually around the 4 HP mark. Sometimes a lot of decks have trouble removing that. Multi-Strike is your tool to help that, because there's most likely going to be times where they're pushing multiple units down your throat, even if you have to wait a turn to do so. Following that, you have the Reaper. You need the Reaper if you want to play an undead Tombstone game. This is just a mandatory. It's not the best, I know, but hey, it's a card. And again, he uses the Tombstone fuel to power the dog, so that's fine. White Knight as a solid defender, early game cleanup, kind of just a generic good card, I think, for the Necromancers right now. If you have a Tombstone deck, White Knight is not bad to add in there. 3-2 is annoying. It will take something out, but being able to come back as a 4-1 helps you in the mid game as well. Very nice card. Magician to generate more skeletons for us. Magicians obviously are used for fueling the tombstones as well, so you're going to get a win-win out of this card. Omaewa for direct unit removal in case things get bad. There are decks that I think carry some very big units that may not be easily outed right away, so Omaewa definitely a must-have, I think. Necrolord to pop the tombstones to create zombies once you're done using them for the dogs, or if you need the tombstones in a pinch, being able to resurrect them as zombies is always effective. Witch Doctor as a global debuff to help control counter swarm decks. So this deck, as you can see, has multi-strike, but not a lot of good ways to deal with some swarm stuff. So Witch Doctors are a swarm control tool. Phantom Horse to target direct things. There's a lot of cards in the competitive scene right now that are baseline under 3 attack power, and with the way that Phantom Horse has been redone to destroy units if attack loses as well, if there's no attack power to them, Phantom Horse is a solid inclusion in the lineup. Norabon to generate more skeletons for Mordennoth. Of course, him generating up to 3 more from tombstones is useful as just more fuel that you can pop out of nowhere for your Mordennoth. Horseback, another control tool to charge an elusive is great, and the dealing 2, again, kind of helps with some swarm control there. Also, it's just a big charge body, which can be very, very helpful. Final Strike, the big AoE swarm, or not swarm, the big AoE spell card that we pair off with Doggo to deal that massive damage across the board. And finally, Mordennoth here as our game ender to essentially put away the opponent. If he can't use the Doggo Strike to do it, Mordennoth will more than likely finish the job. Once you kind of clear the way with a Doggo Strike, 6 damage, wiping out everything, Mordennoth does some great work at just kind of picking off the rest, and maybe even picking off the rest of the castle in the process. So, and it's a secondary win condition too. If you don't find the Doggo Strike, Mordennoth is still very, very powerful and game-ending on his own right. So, with that being said, though, that is, of course, the card by card for the deck. That is the Doggo Strike list. But let's go ahead and check it out in action, as we've got quite a few games. I think to make up for the fact that we haven't posted here in a minute, we're going to, of course, provide you guys with not only the 3 games we usually do for Hidden Combo Series, but 2 extra games as well. So you'll get 5 games to check out what this deck can do. The video might be a little longer because of that. Anyways, let's go ahead and get right into game number 1. Alright, in game 1, we'll be taking on Legacy here in the Viking Druid build. Bit of frost action, perhaps, as we jump right in. We take the flying books ×2, leather-bound books. I'm still not used to them not being a flying tag of some kind. We got the books here, Multi-Strike and Skeletal Warrior, a great early lineup, as we have both kind of our 2-drop draws available to us if we were looking for something specific. Goes to the Ice Weaver on turn 1, so I kind of pick up on the idea that this is going to be a frost-based deck. Dwarven Black is coming in as well. Dwarven confused me a bit. Not really sure why he's here, but sure, why not? Bit of a misplay here as I multi-strike the wrong way around. It wouldn't be a Red Master series of replays without one potentially misplay, and maybe a huge one like that. It was a little concerning, so not off to the best start, but hey, not bad. We go for the Dark Magician to kind of pop that books and create a skeletal squire. Totally intentional, as you can see. Polar bear coming in to block my incoming magician. I figure, all right, that's not really great, so we're going to have to retreat that magician a bit. We're going to throw in our extra draws here, the warrior and the books. We get blasted, though, unfortunately, with the frost blast against my skeletal warrior. He pops in a Dwarven Revenger, moving the Polar Bear in to strike my castle, passes it back to me. We Phantom Horse away the Revenger. We don't want to deal with that at all. We don't want to let that grow as big as he can, or else it's going to be very difficult for us to kill it. So we, of course, just Phantom Horse, draw its stats away. Meanwhile, he's going to do some cockatrice action here, removing my cards, leaving the Phantom Horse alive, though, for us to run back, get a trade in there. We did this trade because we don't want to, well, we're going to lose it anyways with what we wanted to do here. I was going to always play the Horseman to kind of cycle some more draw. So even if we hit into the cockatrice and put the Horseman into the Polar Bear, we still would have taken the damage. So that's why we make that kind of trade. There wasn't really any way that we were going to keep the unit. Following this, we get the Dark Magician onto our field. Again, drawing out more skeletons for us to use. He's going to go for a Polar Bear and a Wounded Deer. Stronger now because he played Call of the Wild a bit earlier that we forget that we didn't really get to mention in the commentary. We go for the Norabon here to generate some more skeletons here. Get a big pull with the Grave Knight. He is going to engage with that Grave Knight a bit with the Polar Bear. Frost Whirl. Not taking everything out. Thankfully keeping the Norabon. But I figured now we're going to go for the Horseback Samurai. We're not at the Mordonoth. That would have been a perfect Mordonoth opportunity, but unfortunately we did not have the gold too. So we do a bit of cleanup here with the Horseback Samurai to pop the Peasant as well as the Polar Bear. Killer Rabbit comes in, destroys my Norabon, unfortunately, but that gives me a pretty clean opportunity to Mordonoth here, popping the Warrior, the Depot, and taking a huge chunk out of our opponent's castle. He's going to go for the Owlbear here in the meantime to block here the Frostrake to freeze off and the Peasant. Now, if the Frostrake wasn't a factor, I would have had the perfect opportunity to walk in with the Dog Final Strike here. We would have enough power to just throw it out there, walk the Mordonoth in, and just end the game. We could also Mordonoth Final Strike here as well. That is a valid opportunity to do so. But I'm worried about the Owlbear and what he could do, so I don't take that opportunity. I still go for the Omaiwa, popping the Owlbear, Phantom Horse to destroy the Frostrake before I can do any more damage. And of course, he's going to throw it back to the Yarm Lightning to take out the Phantom Horse. Peasant throwing out the Owlbear to be a bit intimidating and throw it back to me. At this point, we go for the Skeletal Dog Final Strike combo here. Not exactly the game ender, but it does help us actually remove the Owlbear from the board before that does significant damage. And at this point, I do another Final Strike, so I'm not worried about anything until I see the Maldron. Figured I need the dog. There goes the dog. Pop the dog. Final Strike and clears the board. A bit risky in that position, considering that if we didn't have dog, we'd been in a lot more trouble that game. But that match just kind of goes to show that, you know, sometimes this deck will make mistakes. You know, you will make mistakes with the deck. Things will happen, but it feels very, very strong in its ability to recover, and that's just the nature of Tombstones. A lot of recursion, a lot of bring back from the grave stuff, and a lot of late game swings with not only Mordonoth now, but also the Dog Strike in your arsenal. So that is, of course, only game one, though. We have more to get to, so let's not delay any further and get to game number 2. Next up, we're taking on Three-Toed Crown in a Necromancer Crusader build. We're going to go ahead and hop in, as we do have the combo in hand, but I'm going to actually sub away the Final Strike. We don't really want Final Strike in our hand this early. It is a detriment to us. We need cards to play and generate tombstones. That's the whole idea. So we're going to pass it back to him on turn 1. Turn 2, he goes for a Skeletal Warrior, so I'm seeing a bit of potentially a mirror matchup here with some tombstone or skeleton stuff at the very least. Throw out the Peasant here to intercept the Skeletal Warrior. He generates his tombstone. Pops a Headless Horseman in to do nothing, unfortunately. The charge aspect, of course, does not work for him like that, but we draw our own Horseman, so we'll go for a friendly trade here between Horsemen, both generating a tombstone and drawing a card, throwing it back to our opponent. He goes for a Dark Magician to yoink one of his tombstones away. That is fantastic. He's generating the skeletons he needs to for his deck, so we're going to go ahead and intercept with a White Knight. Throws out a Pegacorn, which is a great inclusion, I think, for Crusader variants of Tombstone decks. Being able to not only spawn the Pegacorn, generate a tombstone off that, but summon something brand new and get an additional tombstone all in one card is nice. You get 2 units for the price of 1, as well as 2 tombstones for the price of 1. And for a deck like this, where you want tombstones in play to use as resources, that is very important. So, Pegacorn, fantastic addition, but standing in our way here, so to speak. We're going to go ahead and pop it with multi-strike alongside the, hold on, I'm going back. The Dark Magician. I forgot what it was mid-sentence. We go our White Knight into the castle here for more damage, forcing him to make the trade, blocking off our own castle with a peasant. He goes for it, of course. Acolyte pops into the White Knight. Shaman coming out, though, being one of the worst cards, I think, in this instance that you could pull, sadly enough. We're going to go ahead and pop his Skeletal Warrior. We think that's, I mean, it was either between that or the Shaman, but we'll go for the neutralizing of Shaman via the Phantom Horse there. He'll, though, at this point, play a Norabon of his own. Norabon, thankfully, rolling very, very poorly. Skeletal Squire and 2 Cursed Pirates. Not what you always want to see. We go for the Phantom Horse again. I'm going to go ahead and shrink down the Norabon to make it a lesser threat to us. And, of course, meanwhile, Phantom Horse will pop the Skeletal Squire, keeping things nice and blocked. Frozen Lich will trade with the Skeletal Horse there. I think a Phantom Horse. Either way, it's a bony horse. And the Norabon, of course, pushes in to hit me for 2. He throws a Skeletal Dog of his own for 6 damage, as you can see, big from all that tombstone power in the back. We're going to try and intercept him, though, with a White Knight and a Peasant at the bottom here to try and keep that damage off of our face. Goes for the Cursed Pirate into the Peasant, draws a Sacred Ground out from the deck, or from his hand, excuse me. And, of course, not only doing some massive removing of the threat here with Witch Doctor, his Norabon gets bigger and his dog gets smaller. Finally, he'll also go for the Zethik to pop every tombstone he has in play here. However, this is where we find Final Strike. Pair with our dog here for 5 attack. It's the perfect amount to not only deal with the swarm, but deal with the bigger stuff as well, like Dracula and Norabon. And as you can see here, the board is perfectly cleared for a Mordennoth in the following turn. Unfortunately, our Mordennoth isn't going to do a lot of damage at its current state, but ideally, if you had kept your skeletons healthy throughout the game, you're now in a perfect position to just unleash a free Mordennoth onto your opponent, and at this point, maybe even kill him, if you can do your math right. We'll go for the Pegacorn Part 2, same with the Horseman, and push that all in. I figured that is fine with me. We're going to go ahead and Horseman into his Horseman again, his Horseman dealing damage to his Pegacorn, leaving him at 1. We will Norabon with our remaining Tombstones. I'm hoping to generate more Tombstones before the use of Skeletal Dog here with things like the Bone Drake here and the Skeletal Warrior, as you can see there, even providing more Tombstones for us. Norabon into the Pegacorn, yielding the Pterodactyl. Heavenclaw, though, doing a massive cleanup against this board. Being able to move and attack again simultaneously is just devastating. The Frozen Lich comes out and deals a menacing stare at us. Fantastic. And we'll go for the Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead, of course, yielding a Norabon, which, again, is actually a devious part of the Army card. Despite the chances being low, you still have options to pull cards like Mordennoth, Angel of Death, and Norabon. In this case here, we've gotten Norabon into the board from Army of the Damned, producing more skeletons for us to hopefully stay alive longer for the use of Mordennoth. Wraiths come out now. Behemothra comes out. I figured that's fine. No big deal. We do have ways to kind of clean that up and navigate it here. And as you can see, he's going to go and try and weaken our Squire here with the Pterodactyl. I think, yeah, that's fine. No big deal. Skeletal Squire will hit in, killing off the Pterodactyl, taking away a target for our Mordennoth. Mordennoth comes in, cleans up the Wraiths, the Behemothra, and just one shy of the castle, but Norabon thankfully is here to finish up the remaining damage. So, of course, showcasing that not every deck you need the Skeletal Dog to be your win condition. Mordennoth is still plenty enough to deal with the oncoming threat, or just not even oncoming threat, just ending the game. As you see, Doggo was used to take care of the swarm that kind of maybe could have killed us if we didn't have it. And, of course, the Mordennoth, just direct power to the face and ending the game. Beautiful, beautiful stuff right there. And transitions us very well into game number 3. All right, in our next match, we'll see us take on a Robo Peep here. Old friend of the channel, Robo Peep. I don't know. I didn't have any further setup for that. But anyways, Peep's got a green-yellow deck going up against us here, and we should open up pretty well. We've got a Warrior here, got the Reaper, and the Army to produce a couple more Skeletons, which we might need. We'll throw it back on the turn 1 play. Nothing going on as of right now. Gives us room for a turn 2 Warrior. Peep's going to respond here with a turn 2 Peasant. Now, normally this isn't great trading, sacrificing a 3-1 for a 1-1, but in this case, we want to establish the tombstones as soon as possible here and get things rolling. Plus, with the Skeletal Warrior cycling, we could find things like the Norabon and the Mortonod, so it's good to make that kind of trade. We'll go into a Reaper here for a Green Drake response from Robo. We're going to go ahead and sack that off as well, kind of keep tombstones fresh, keep them active, so we can use things like Dark Magician, as you see there, drawing the Frost Lich from the tombstones. Going to go in for a Thief plus a Peasant combo here. We're going to respond with the White Knight. Dark Magician cleans up the Thief here. We'll go White Knight Peasant of our own. Just kind of, you know, gain some control of the board. He's going to go Man the Cannons. Great play. Of course, it's going to not only snipe off the Dark Magician, or basically the whole board, but also the Reborn White Knight as well. Following up with another Thief, we'll go with the Headless Horseman. Horseman, of course, getting us more draw and establishing that tombstone, which gives us room for an Army of the Dead here to follow up, and again, getting more and more skeletons to our hand. Robo's going to respond here with the Pegacorn into the Peasant once again here. We'll go for the Phantom Horse, taking out the Pegacorn with that Warcry debuff. Gets a Frozen Penguin, unfortunately, but knowing that Robo is not in blue, we can assume that that thing's not getting any more attack power. He's going to use the Horseman he stole off of us from a Thief here to interact, popping our Phantom Horse, making room for the Penguin to push right in. And now he's got a bit of a sizable army here. The Skeletal Warrior also stolen via a Thief. We'll multi-strike the Penguin and the Skeletal Warrior away, putting out the Magician and the Dog. I do have multiple Dogs here, more than enough to keep for final strikes. That's why I use one here, just kind of get more body and more manpower out. Unfortunately, I do run into a Swordsman here. Swordsman's a bit of a big body, very iffy one at that. 5-2, clearing up most of our board. Thankfully, with his changes, not actually damaging our castle anymore off of the spawns, so that is very good. Keeps us a little bit more healthy than we would have been otherwise. But we do run into, or we do have to Omaiwa to get rid of the Swordsman here before he does any sort of more significant damage. Following up the Frozen Lich and the Cursed Pirate, just to, again, get more bodies on the board here to try and control whatever's happening. Now, as you see here, we're going to go for the, he's going to go for the Minotaur here, big double strike and charge. Going to clear up both of my units. Pen's getting some more shots on the castle, bringing me to 12. Not the worst, we're still over 10, thankfully, so, but concerning for sure. We do pull the Frost Willow off the Frozen Lich, which is fantastic. That plus the Horseman does take out the Minotaur as well. Unfortunately, we're not going to have any other ways to, use those tombstones. So we will go ahead and go for the Skeletal Dog here for a final strike potential. I'm hoping to draw it, but right now the board is, we're just throwing it out there for another big stat line. I'm okay with keeping one dog in hand here because, that will be, if need be, that will be the dog for the final strike. We'll use the other one to kind of put some pressure on our opponent. So you see here, he's going to go for double Sea Witch to put more sea monsters into his hand, even though I don't think he's really used a lot of sea monsters in this particular matchup here. We do draw the final strike, which is amazing. However, I do see a better opportunity here with the Horseback Samurai. Samurai, of course, is going to come in, hit the Peasant for only 1 damage, killing the other Sea Witches via that damage that he spreads out in combat, leaving our dog to connect for 6 to the face here. Another sizable chunk taken out from our opponent, allowing us to clean up the board easier with maybe a Mortonod or the Skeletal Dog final strike combo still in our hand. He'll go for another Minotaur here, cleaning up both of our heavy hitters, which is more than okay with me. Our White Knight has perfect room to slap into the face here. We'll go for the Norabon to follow up here with the Grave Knight as a huge pull. And he'll respond with the Shiva. Shiva being quite a powerful option, but we do have a lot of ways to take care of it. As you see here, Grave Knight going to walk in for 5. We'll use the final strike on the Grave Knight to kill that off, as well as moving everything into place here. Now, unfortunately, a bit of a misstep on my part. I didn't do the math. I didn't move the White Knight properly, and I had left the 1 damage open, which could have been filled out by the Skeletal Squire. So a bit of an issue with exact lethal there, but I figured it's okay. We have the dog, we have the final strike in hand here, and as you can see, he's going to build up Cleric, he's going to build up Paladin, and he's going to build up, I believe, Green Drake. Yes, he does. And so here would be a pretty bad spot for me, not having a lot of units here, him having the priority. But here's where Skeletal Dog comes into play here. Skeletal Dog plus the final strike will deal the remaining damage, as well as clearing the board. So even if we didn't have lethal damage, still is a great way to kind of reset the board progress and take out a sizable chunk of what your opponent can commit. Because sometimes in those moments when you decide to pull off a board wipe, you know, your opponent can overcommit to their board, summon a lot of troops, a lot of units onto their side, and be susceptible to our Doggo Strike combo. But yeah, a fantastic match there with a Robo. Pretty much clean cut for how I like Doggo Strike to operate as a deck. We didn't see the Mordanoth in that game though, but it kind of shows that you don't need Mordanoth to win either. So if you don't have Mordanoth, no worries. Doggo Strike can still win you the game with the resources available. However, more games to see, more games to check out, so let's not delay any further. Game number 4 coming at you right now. All right, in game number 4, we'll see us take on David Badblood in the Necromancer Warlock factions. We open up here pretty iffy. We do have Mordanoth, which is big, but we're not going to be using that for a while. Instead, we do have the Flying Books and Omaewa to help us, you know, in the early game, if the case might be. I'm a little nervous that this might be an aggro matchup based upon what Warlocks have been doing inside the game as of late. So we see the Peasant here as the turn 2 play. I kind of have a little bit of relief here. Not pure aggro stuff going on from our opponent, which is more than okay. We're going to respond with the Flying Books to trade to the Peasant here. He's going to follow up with the Mischievous Imp plus Skeletal Warrior. So a bit more of the early drop units on his side. Wishing I did have a multi-strike for this, but we do not. We instead go for the coin into the Dark Magician here to try and get a clean 2-for-1. Unfortunately, he pulls Trick Wand from the Mischievous Imp, which actually pops the remainder of my Dark Magician there, making way for his Skeletal Warrior to come in and hit face. Not the greatest, so we do have to respond by throwing the Peasant as well as the second copy of Flying Books here. Again, just trying to get as much cycle as possible, a lot of draw going. We'll see if he has any removal for Peasant, which maybe he does not right now. Wizard will draw him a card, spell card that is. The Warrior will hit for another 3 into the face. Throwing it back to my side, I trade with the Peasant into the Skeletal Warrior first to kind of clear that up. I know I wanted to make that connection. We also go for the Headless Horseman here into the Wizard to kind of clear that up as well, giving ourselves another Tombstone, playing the Frostlets to block and passing it again. These early mid-game turns for Doggo Strike, and even in a mirror matchup like this, are pretty clean cut. Pretty standard. We're essentially both trying to get tombstones out on the board here, so throwing a lot of our cheaper stuff into the fray here, trying to make it the best trades we possibly can. We go for the Frostlets trade here. I Hypothermia his Skeletal Warrior away, using another one to block my incoming phase. Hoping to pull something off of the Army of the Damned, and we certainly did pull something. A second copy of Mordanoth. Another reason this deck is so gross is because the legendary pool of Undead has a lot of skeleton stuff. So you can, in fact, pull cards like Norabon, Angel of Death, and in this case, we do get another copy of Mordanoth to use. So very, very scary. And our opponent doesn't know that. Usually your opponent will go and think, okay, I have to deal with one Mordanoth and that's it. But as you can see, well, in a minute here, things might get a little dicey. Unfortunately, based on the hand calculations and the hand size, we do have to... I say hand calculations. Based on the hand space, we have to discard the Witch Doctor, which is a bit unfortunate here. He's going to go for a Grave Knight in the meantime. Meanwhile, pushing the Peasants up to my face to try and kill us. I'm going to Omaewa the Grave Knight away here. I don't really have the room to deal with it otherwise. Meanwhile, we will go for the Bone Drake, summoning the Skeletal Warrior up top. The Phantom Horse will take out the Peasant in the back. We'll throw it back to our opponent. Going to go for the Zombie trade into the Horse. Our Peasant will, or his Peasant will take out our Warrior. And the Zombie, I believe, moves in for face damage, if I remember correctly. Acolyte gets summoned. White Knight gets summoned. Again, trying to just get more resources out here to fill up his Tombstone count. The Wizard play as well to kind of draw out a spell. And it'll pass back to me. I go for the Bone Drake, removing the Zombie. Going for the Norabon Lich as well. He's pulling a huge Grave Knight to keep ourselves protected on the face here. Forcing him to use a lot of resources to kill me. He does, unfortunately, have a Frost Whirl from that Lich from earlier. And he's going to go ahead and get some clean trades in here with our Grave Knight to destroy it. Unfortunately, we can't get to the castle, but he will use the Wizard to pop my Norabon, which is a bit sad because now I'm left with a lot less skeletons for this Mordonoth. However, I do commit to a single Mordonoth here. It does help me clean up the board a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't grab the Manfish in that trade, but it does kind of give off the illusion that, okay, I've used my Mordonoth here. I'm kind of out of options, which, you know, for him is fantastic. As you see here, he's Dracula. He's going to put Dracula to the board, putting Reaper as well. I'm going to go ahead and Skeletal Squire away the Manfish there. The Skeletal Dog comes out for the combo. As we have Final Strike. So, of course, Dracula, Reaper, huge damage on the castle, destroying the depot. Massive, massive stuff here. He goes for a screenplay, which is very scary at this point, dealing 20 potential damage, safely teleporting the castle away. However, we do have enough, or just enough, to squeak by a Mordonoth. I think we had 9 damage on that in total based on the Skeletal Dog and the 2 Mordonoths, since they both count for each other. So again, fantastic way to end it there. The double Mordonoth, a very, very sneaky play for sure. But showcasing how, you know, there's even more power to this deck than initially thrown in with the cards you have. You can play, of course, one each of the legendaries. However, it's a good chance you'll probably see some of those extra legendaries along the way in your matchups. Again, things like a double Mordonoth is very, very powerful. With that being said, fantastic game. We'll go to match number 5 now for our final game of the day. Let's go ahead and see what's there for us. All right, and for game number 5, we got us taking on Mr. Classic 0611, otherwise known as Captain Classic from Cards and Castles 1. So a familiar face to me personally as we open up decently, not the best, but decently. The Skeletal Warrior and the Multi-Strike are going to be great additions in the early game, but Mordonoth and Final Strike now, it's not the best. The second Multi-Strike will help, though, as he passed turn 1. We're going to go into the Skeletal Warrior for turn 2. Yep, there you go. To get not only the tombstone, but the extra skeleton as well. He'll go for a School of Magic to get himself an early spell here, as well as a spell discount for the rest of the game, as long as that building, of course, is remaining. We're going to go ahead and throw the Reaper out turn 3. An early Reaper is also good. It keeps our Horseman in hand still. Pops it with the Pyromancer, which is a card I don't really see too often, so it's a peculiar choice there. We're going to Horseman away the Pyromancer just to kind of even things up. He'll use the Peasant to strike into the castle, but 1 Peasant is, of course, fine. We'll throw it back to him, who goes for a Chaotic Storm at 4 gold, and pops out the Killer Rabbit. Very nice use of the School of Magic ramp to, or discount, excuse me, to make that card cheaper to play. We'll go for a successful Multi-Strike, though, hitting the Peasant and then popping the Killer Rabbit, so we don't have to deal with that anymore. Go for a second Chaotic Storm, this time producing a Dwarven Paladin, which will not get the healing, of course, which is more than okay with me. We'll go for a Phantom Horse that we drew, or at least one of them that we did pull onto that Dwarven Paladin to kind of shrink it. He'll go for an Elephant plus a Wild Strike combination, a great way for him to not only kill off my card, but also produce a card off of the War Elephant that is better than the Peasant. Unfortunately for him, our second Phantom Horse will come and clean up that War Elephant, take it down to size here, and we'll use our Phantom Horse to not only ding the Door Knight, but also contract that Madness as well, meaning we can keep our other units away from the Madness and keep them alive here. In this case, 2 Dark Magicians pulling that second Mordonoth once again. A fantastic pull for us. I'll go for the Perched Ambusher here, which is a really nice combination kill of the double Dark Magicians because they're both at 4 health, so they both kind of die simultaneously. This, of course, is going to prompt us to pull off one of our 2 Mordonoths with the coin here to throw a big destruction-ish ability onto the board here. I say ish because nothing significant gets popped, and of course the power of that Mordonoth is a bit lower, but I figured he might not be able to handle a Mordonoth right now, so we'll at least throw the body at him. Unfortunately for me, he was prepared. The Rider, the Ambusher, is going to pop it along with the Forest, what we saw earlier. He'll throw it back to us by popping a Peasant. We'll go for the second of the Mordonoths, though, to a pretty open board state here and deal a significant amount of damage to him, dealing upwards of 8 points of damage. We'll go for the Pyromancer and in combination with a second Forest Revolt here, which does unfortunately kill my big bony dragon. And now I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I can somehow provide at least 2 more points of damage onto the enemy, I'll be in a great spot and pretty much win the game. We'll go for the Horseback Samurai here, which will of course hit the Peasant, but also pop the Pyromancer. Go for the Flying Books as well, because I figured, alright, I just need damage. At this point, he throws out a Raknoth, which is concerning here, especially because he goes for a fire trap, as well as the flare, which not only destroys my samurai inadvertently, but also does significant damage to my castle. Thankfully for us, they have the Omaiwa to deal with the Raknoth directly. We'll go for the White Knight, which does proc the backdraft, so we will, of course, lose the White Knight, but also gain back that 4-1 thanks to the Resurrection ability, followed by the Frost Lich, and pass the turn. He'll go for a double touch of life here to push himself a little higher outside of the damage range, which is a bit unfortunate. Use a Firestorm to deal with my White Knight, following that up with a Knight of Flowers to spawn in 2 additional Sunflowers, which could be nice if paired with those touch of life we saw earlier, but unfortunately those were used to destroy or to heal up the castle a bit more, not destroy, pardon me. We'll go for the multi-strike here, allowing our Frostless to hit into face here, followed up by the Witch Doctor and the books. He'll Firestorm, unfortunately, once again to make way and clear our board, not only by killing the 2 units with 1 HP, but also with the Knight of Flowers, destroys the remaining HP on the Witch Doctor. He'll follow that up with a Burnout to generate a spell since he lost that Knight of Flowers, but that's about it. We'll go for the Headless Horseman play here. Again, trying to find the second final strike that we had in the deck. Go for the Army of the Damned here to summon the Squire and the Warrior to hand. We'll pull out both of our Warriors to see if we can find maybe a Norabon from either of these 2. We do thankfully find said Norabon, which we can use in the following turn if we want to spawn just a heaping load of bodies. We do go for the Norabon this turn just to kind of push him away from us and try to find some big cards. We'll go for the Backdraft Trap as well, which thankfully does not kill my Norabon. We'll Winds of the North into his face here to push everything closer and push his peasant out of the way. He'll unfortunately, in response, Blaze here, destroying most of what I had on the board, and then following up with the Surge of Life, pushing peasants into a sort of block formation. Unfortunately, that is going to be where the game ends, as we now throw the Skeletal Dog out for the strike. There's the final strike there, dealing the 6 to face, moving the Grave Knight in for the remaining 5 points of damage. Very, very close in that burn matchup here. I believe the idea was Rakanoth burn from our opponent, and nearly got us too with all of those, chips of Blaze, Flame Storms, etc. But thankfully we just had enough to squeak out with the Grave Knight. If that wasn't the Grave Knight and a very smaller unit, we probably would have lost that game, as they would have died from all of the burn stuff going on and then not enough damage to actually kill our opponent. So very thankful for that, but a really, really great back and forth with our opponent there, showcasing that, while it does struggle against, burn here and there and maybe some aggro stuff, it can pull out the win. It can use its recursion very well to build up a force to just throw at your opponent here, whether it by Mordennoth doing the big damage or the Doggo Strike. But overall, a great series of matches for this deck, and of course probably plenty more to come. I'm really liking the way Doggo Strike is, how it feels, all of that. It's fantastic stuff, and I do highly recommend trying it out if you haven't done so already. However, that's going to be it for the matches for now, so let's go ahead and end off this video properly. Alright folks, with that being said, we are going to close it off here, giving you one last look at the Doggo Strike build here to the side. If you want, feel free to try it out for yourself, or if you want the simpler way to copy over the decks, feel free to use the deck code, which I do post now in the description below for the Cards and Castles 2 decks. You always you can always manage, import, paste your deck code right there, and yeah, you'll have a full out list. If you don't have all the cards too, it'll kind of map out the deck here and let you build it along the way as well, which I think is very, very useful. But let me know what you guys thought of today's matches, and let me know what you think of the deck. Be sure to leave some comments down below if you enjoy, if you don't like it, tell me what your feedback is. I'm always good to hear it. And if you have enjoyed the video, be sure to leave it a like, share with your friends. It helps us here on YouTube. Everything that you do to help support the video is a step in the right direction, as YouTube likes the fun stuff, like when you interact and whatnot, as you do on YouTube. However, that is going to be it for me for now. So, until next time, guys, take care, be safe, and until next time, stay gaming.